All right, I'm Chris Avena with the American Outdoor News Podcast. I'm here with Chris Tymeson from Safari Club International's Advocacy Division. Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. I know there's a lot to go over today.
Certainly is. Appreciate you having me on.
Now, Safari Club International is so vast and there's so many different departments. You're in the Advocacy Division, which if people aren't aware, you have offices in Washington, D.C., and you're constantly litigating and fighting for hunter rights, like the black bear hunts that were just pushed through for Florida and Louisiana this past season. That was all SCI's doing. Well, they played a major role in it. And now Virginia and Vermont. Michigan and Vermont.
Yeah, so you touched on SCI briefly, but I'm the vice president for government affairs. We've got a team of about 15 lobbyists and government affairs people worldwide. We've got an office in South Africa, got a couple folks there. We've got some folks who do advocacy work in Europe, and then I've got DC, and we've got the States, and then we've got a litigation team. So we have people constantly working the issues out there, protecting the freedom to hunt and sustainable use worldwide. The Florida black bear situation was one that we intervened in and supported the hunt. Actually, the case was just finally dismissed, so we're going to go forward this fall again with another season, another hunting season. And then in Louisiana, we have Maria Davidson, who works for the foundation side, who's our large carnivore biologist. And she actually worked on Louisiana black bear when she was an employee in Louisiana. And then I was the state and local liaison for the Western U.S. at the time. I did some legislative work and some administrative regulatory work with the department there. And then our chapters, of course, supported that hunt. And I think now this is their third year, and I can't remember the number, but the number of permits has increased again. So, and the Acadiana chapter actually just had their banquet this weekend, and there's an auction permit, and it sold for $18,000, which helps raise money for bear conservation.
Wow,
So that's
that's
pretty
something.
significant. But in Michigan, you raised that issue. I think there's an island there that we're talking about where they're going to propose a hunt, and SCI is about to do a comment this week. I think the comment period's due this week, and one of our state and local liaisons, B. Frederick, is working that issue. So we're always out there looking for new opportunities. I think as you look at the battleground states and the battleground issues, predators or carnivores, however they're classified by the state, are always a hot button issue that we're all engaging in.
Well, the black bear population really has been exploding. I know where I hunt in New York, we've taken more black bear off the property than whitetail.
Yeah, certainly black bears are an American success story, a wildlife success story, right? And as you have those populations increase, then there are going to be conflicts. Like SCI, this is before my time, but litigated in New Jersey, and then the governor didn't want to have a season and shut that down, and now they're back to having a season, and because of conflicts, right? You can't have these megafauna species and then not expect there's going to be some sort of conflict. Look at grizzly
Yeah,
bears as an example, or any other species that had a low population or was endangered and then rebounds. There's ultimately going to be human conflict.
yeah, I would imagine Connecticut's going to be on that docket soon as well.
Yeah, Connecticut,
Uh,
I think, aren't they the only state left with the largest bear population, essentially, that doesn't have a season? And
yeah, the human to bear conflict is really off the charts in Connecticut.
right, right. And it was something that I asked our foundation folks to look at recently. So, yeah.
Now, more importantly, on the congressional docket in Colorado, the right to hunt and fish.
Right. So the right to
Yeah.
hunt and fish, yeah. There's a petition right now. They're in the process of counting signatures. Probably should hear something later this week or early next on the validity. So they check the validity of the signatures, their signature gathering process, and there are
Mhm.
requirements to do a ballot measure and for a constitutional amendment in Colorado. that require certain signatures from certain districts, a percentage of those. And so the Secretary of State's office received the petition and the signatures, and I think they had about 180,000. It takes about 124,000 to make it onto the ballot. So 124,000 valid signatures. So then the Secretary of State's office goes through that process. Um, there's about 23 or 24, I've lost track exactly on number of states that had a constitutional right to hunt, fish, trap, some variation of it. When I was with Kansas Wildlife and Parks, when I was the chief attorney, I worked on that issue for about 15 years or 16 years, helped get that measure passed in Kansas. So it's certainly a number of states out there that are working towards that. And I think as you saw in Colorado last year, when Prop 127 was on the ballot, that was an attempt to ban mountain lion hunting and bobcat hunting and trapping, and that failed 54 to 45 percent. And then this is a counter reaction to that. Folks are saying, well, we need some protection from crazy ballot measures.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't hunting a God-given right? Isn't it something we've been doing since the dawn of time?
It is something we've been doing since the dawn of time, but there are people who don't want us to do it, and they're out there fighting us every day. Just this week, or it might have been Friday, but the Center for Biological Diversity filed a lawsuit in Arizona over mountain lion management, trying to shut down mountain lion hunting. It's consistent, and it's persistent, and we always have to be vigilant in our fight.
Well, they're persistent in the fight until it's in their backyard and it affects them, and then they're up in arms. Look at the wolf delisting that just got blocked again. The wolf is the poster child for animal rights activists. It's they're pack animals. They hunt for sport. They don't just hunt for food. Look at what they've done in Yellowstone National Park. I mean, the elk and deer herds are decimated because of wolves.
I don't think anybody could say with a straight face that wolves are not recovered, right? They've been recovered for a long time. Both Republican and Democratic administrations have tried to delist them. Really, the only route effectively that's not going to be tied up in court is a congressional delisting, much like what was done in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. Although there are people still trying to relist those wolf populations through litigation means. But if Congress could have delisted the wolf, there was an attempt last week, and it was led by Senator Johnson. It's called a hotline, and it requires unanimous consent of the Senate. And so Senator Johnson from Wisconsin stood up, pushed this issue through. The first senator to object was Senator Booker from New Jersey, who has no wolves, but he does have black bears, and he should know, just based on that experience with human conflicts and conflicts with agricultural producers. I would have hoped he'd have learned a lesson there, but clearly he didn't, and it doesn't impact him personally with no wolves in his state. So he stood up and opposed it. He was the one, or the first one anyway.
Well, when your pets go missing, you know where they're going.
Right. It's unfortunate that he did that, but it's the political reality of it.
So why don't you walk me through a process of like the Colorado right to hunt and fish? How does SCI get involved, and how do they roll up their sleeves in this fight?
Right. So there are a lot of folks involved in a ballot initiative like that. A lot of folks on the ground. So what happens in this is the case in the Prop 127 issue with the mountain lions. There are folks in Colorado. We work in coalitions all around the country. And when I was the Western State and Local Liaison, I'm still on some of those coalitions in the West where I was pretty well integrated. But you work with other groups like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation or folks like that, right? Because there are partners. And so in those coalitions, then smaller coalitions form, and you break down those issues and then see where we can engage and what we can do. Part of it's fundraising, so we help raise funds on Prop 127. We're still waiting for the signature process on the Colorado right to hunt and fish. Obviously, it took money to gather signatures, and IOTR led the way on that, and there are some other folks who did that as well. And so then there'll be an issues committee formed that will, because the Colorado right to hunt and fish amendment has a number now, but it's just an initiative petition number. It's not the final number that goes in front of the public. So once that number is assigned, once those signatures are approved, there will be an issues committee formed with the actual ballot measure number, so people aren't confused. And that's when they'll start really fundraising and making a plan for yard signs and getting people out to vote and advertising and all of those things. Now, in Colorado, in the case of Colorado, we have 4 chapters there, and 4 of our chapters will be engaged and use our membership that way in a grassroots fashion. They'll also fundraise. We'll also fundraise at the federal level, not at the federal level, at the national level, which is where I'm at. So, and then we'll try to get our members to encourage folks to get out to vote. That's what it takes, is people to get out and vote. I think there were 400,000 hunters not registered to vote in Colorado, which is a significant number.
That's a huge number.
Right. And so when you're talking about, in the case of, there was a wolf ballot measure in like 2020, which required the reintroduction of wolves to Colorado, and it lost by 12,000 votes. So if you think if we could have just gotten a fraction of those unregistered voters that are hunters out to vote, we could have won that measure.
I have found that most hunters will piss and moan about, oh, they're taking away our right here, or they put in a lead ban there. But when it comes time to step up and do something or contribute, they don't do it.
Yes. So when I was the attorney for Kansas Wildlife and Parks, we had commission meetings, and people would often complain about things like that, what you just discussed. But honestly, people don't show up, and they didn't show up in the legislature. I was often the only person testifying in the legislature against bad bills. And I think sportsmen are generally apathetic today. And it's because I've thought a lot about this. It's partially, at least, because game populations are high. And so when game populations are low, hunters will show up in droves to, like, if we said we're going to reduce from the maximum number of days of waterfowl season from 74 down to 39 and go to the most restrictive, you would have waterfowl hunters in there fighting, like December 31st is going to be the best day. But when there's no impending threat and game populations are high, hunters are generally apathetic and don't show up like that. Right? It takes an emergency to get people involved. And it has to be a big emergency.
Let's take New York, for example. I'm in New York. Are you familiar with the new Earn a Buck program that they had just put in?
I'm not specifically, but I'm familiar with other ones around the country.
Well, the deer population in New York it's up, especially where I am on Long Island. It's off the charts. So the Earn a Buck, as far as my understanding, if you shoot some does, you get another buck tag. Am I right in my interpretation of that?
Yeah, I think that's generally right, how those programs work. Yeah.
Okay, so why are people complaining about that? You got to shoot a doe? I hunt to fill my freezer. I don't care if I shoot a buck or a doe. So if I have to shoot an extra doe and I get a buck tag, so what? What is the problem?
Well, somebody looks at that and might say that that's a taking away an opportunity. Let's say a big buck walks out and they can't shoot it because they haven't shot their doe yet, right? It's choice. We managed in, so my background, I spent a couple decades as the chief attorney for Kansas, and we managed for people's choice. And there were lots of other folks who had ideas about how to manage deer, and we managed. The key for our management regime was, if you want to have big bucks, you shoot deer post rut when
Hmm.
big bucks are not vulnerable. We also allowed hunters to self-select. So if they wanted to shoot a yearling buck or a doe or whatever, they only had one buck tag, six does, up to six does, which is pretty significant.
Yeah,
And
that's
most people, like our studies showed, like 1% of people would kill five deer. Most people will kill a buck and a doe or two does. I mean, and that's even that bell curve was like pretty steep when it came to those five, right? To hit, like, you would have to go up in the very small percentage. So I th- I don't disagree with you. It's not an imposition in my book to have to kill a doe before you can kill a buck, but some people might have a concern about that opportunity.
well, even like the 3-point rule. Yeah, I was a little like this when they first came out with that, but you see a significant difference
You
in
can.
within 2 years. You see a significant difference in the size of the deer.
So I'm not familiar with the deer management scheme in New York. Do you have a rifle season in the rut?
Yeah, we have bow season goes from October 1st to the beginning of rifle mid-November, and then rifle through December. So you could take a buck during bow season, and you could take one during rifle season.
So traditions are hard to change, right? And so I live a mile from the Missouri line in Kansas, and just to my east, same genetics, right? But they have a different management scheme. They hunt deer during the rut with rifles, and so there are some states that do that. And in order to get what Kansas has by not hunting in the rut and getting that older age class deer, they come up with schemes like and I say scheme or a regime or a methodology, not like scheme in a bad way, but a 3-point rule to increase the age class of deer, because they're not getting it just by, they can't, if you brought up the idea that we're going to move the rifle deer season from the middle of November to the 1st of December, like, somebody might have their head on a pike after that, right? Because people
Yeah.
like traditions, and there are family traditions associated with those opening days and all of that type of stuff. So those management regimes or methodologies that you're talking about try to get you to that older age class deer and make a difference that way.
So if it's brown, it's down, is out. You can't do that anymore.
Right, right. I did get the
Yeah.
chance to hunt New York this spring. I hunted for a turkey up there and had a great time. The number of turkeys I was up near Lyme, actually, like
Oh, okay.
right on the Canadian border. So
Yeah,
fantastic trip.
that's Canada. I don't consider that New York.
It's a beautiful country. It was my first time that far north in New York.
Yeah, New York is deceiving. We have a little of everything here. We have great beaches. We have great cities, and we have beautiful mountains. And way up north by where you were, we get some really big deer. Even by me in Long Island, we have some Boone and Crockett deer here. It's
Mhm.
very overlooked because there's inherently there has not been coyote here. We're just starting to see them. The only predators that deer had were us. So they get old, they get big, and get some big deer here. So also you have the New Jersey suppressor ban that SCI is fighting.
Correct. So our litigation team engaged on suppressors. There have been like a couple big wins in suppressors recently. Some we're not engaged in, some we are engaged in. Certainly, New Jersey, we're engaged in. We filed as the only hunting group, along with some of our more typical mainstream gun group partners, to try to overturn the ban there on suppressors. For hunters, we just engaged with OIRA, which is on the federal level. There was an issue about regulation of suppressors and between Commerce Department and State Department and whether or not they should be exportable. We engaged with OIRA, submitted our comments on behalf of hunters, and as of like November 20th, you'll be able to take, if you want to hunt with your suppressor out of the country, you'll be able to take it out of the country and bring it back in on a 4457 form, which is like a form that you use to register your personal goods, taking them in out of the country. So that's a big
Mm-hmm.
win. Um, Certainly, there was a case recently, I think it was in Texas. We're not part of it, but because we did advocate last year on the one big beautiful bill to reduce the fee on suppressors. There was a $200 tax stamp to take that to
Mm-hmm.
zero. Uh, Now that there's no tax on it, there's a question on whether or not the federal government can regulate them under the National Firearms Act. At least one court has said that is not the case, that the federal government can't regulate, and so we're waiting to see on, I think, there whether or not there will be an appeal by the federal government on that case. So there's a lot of suppressor activity going on, certainly.
Why the pushback on suppressors? What's the problem with that?
I think it's misinformation. For some reason, back in 1934, people thought that it was a weapon of assassins or whatever. It's a hearing protection issue. I was in the service. I have bad hearing. I was in the infantry, shot a lot of guns, went to Iraq. Uh, you know, put earplugs in when you go to combat. There's a lot of uh, detrimental activity that occurs to your ears when you're shooting guns, and I think that it's quite silly. I just was in South Africa 3 weeks ago, and I went on a hunt with my brother. We had been planning it for the last year, and in South Africa, as an example, you can buy a suppressor over the counter. Like you just
Wow.
walk into a store and you can buy a suppressor. Uh, it, it seems counterintuitive to those of us who live here and have, I mean, I have a few suppressors. I've gone through the process and the background check and the wait period. The wait period has improved significantly. Uh,
Yeah.
it used to be, I think I waited 14 months for my first one, and then it was 8 months, and then 4 months, and now it's down to sometimes days for folks. So the process has improved. We'll see we'll see what happens on the litigation, whether it's taken out or not. I did, and so back to your original question, I did, when I advocated for the allowance of suppressors for hunting, the law wasn't clear in Kansas, and I testified in front of the legislature. And some of the pushback I got then was they're whisper quiet, which they're not. They take a rifle shot down to 120 decibels or whatever the number is, depending on the caliber and the suppressor model. Um, there was misinformation from some legislators who were farmers who said, I want to know who's shooting in my property. And I'm like, you certainly will still hear a suppressed shot. It just takes it below a level where it's damaging to your hearing.
And it does make it easier on the hearing. It also makes it easier when you're shooting. I found there's a lot less of a recoil when you're using a suppressor as well.
Less recoil, you can hear the shot, like you can be sure of the shot hitting the animal more readily. Like on my most recent hunt in Africa, my brother filmed some of the shots, and you can you hear the shot, and then you can hear the bullet thwack. So it gives you some confidence in your shot.
So let's say, hypothetically, and we're talking about repercussions here. You went into the store in South Africa, you bought a suppressor, you just stuck it in your luggage and brought it home. Um, what happens if they see it? You have a suppressor in customs.
Yeah, that's a whole big problem. They're still regulated. You still have to have a federal background check. I would not advocate for anybody to do that in any stretch of the imagination. And it's illegal to import it currently. Yeah.
Sure it is. Sure it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, because they're going to see it in customs anyway. So,
Right. You could end up going to jail, and that's not a place where I want to go.
so what's on the horizon that SCI is getting involved with? I know there's something every day that you guys are fighting for.
Well, we put out a weekly advocacy email. I would say the top 5 things that we've worked on recently. We're internationally, we're expanding some new opportunities, hoping we're fighting. There's a potential trophy ban, import ban in France that's brewing. Uh, we've got predator management. Certainly, there's a wolf delisting case that's going on right now. I think there's a brief done soon. We're about to file comments on wolves in Montana because they're going to reduce the quota from 450 to 250 is what the proposal is, and it's based on some unreviewed it's science is usually peer reviewed, and this is not peer reviewed science, and it's based on a model. So I think there are some folks who are uncomfortable with that. Um, we've got the Colorado right to hunt. We just had IP28 in Oregon fail. That's something I personally have worked on since I started at SCI 5 years ago. That would have banned hunting, fishing, trapping, animal agriculture, killing a mouse in your house. Those folks have doubled down. They got 141,000 signatures. Only 104,000 were valid. It took 117 to get on the ballot. They've already said they're coming back. So we'll start working on that issue again. Commission makeup. I think that there are some places where the antis have gotten a foothold on some commissions, and that's pretty problematic. Washington State is one that I've worked on where they had banned the spring bear season, banned hunting of spring bears. Colorado recently, their commission, there was a proposed fur ban. The fur ban was defeated, but they took and reduced the take of fur bears. There was no limit on fur bear take. They had wanted a limit. It went proposed at 15. They asked the department for an alternative. The alternative that the department proposed was 8. Out of the blue, they came out and said, no, it's 2. So two muskrats, for example, instead of it would have been unlimited. Uh, I think that there are some procedural problems with that under notice and not opportunity to comment. So SCI is looking at what our litigation options are. There's always anti-gun legislation out there that impacts hunters. Uh,
Always.
mostly around center fires, and then they, what it is the anti-gunners are going after black guns or AR platforms, and they loop in all center fire rifles or any rifle that has a magazine or any number of, if it has a thumb hole stock, then it becomes
Yeah.
whatever their definition of a bad gun is. Uh, ammunition bans, so lead bans. We're working on some Sunday hunting issues. Still, there are a few states with Sunday hunting issues. Sunday hunting
Pennsylvania
issues,
okayed Sunday hunting. That was a big success story there.
right? Those are things that our community, SCI, and our larger conservation community have been working on Sunday hunting bans for a long time. And then, trophy import bans. New York, for example, it's a perennial issue in New York that we fight trophy import bans. And,
Yeah.
it's super colonial to tell Africans how to manage their wildlife by us implementing trophy bans when we don't have to live with elephants and, lions and leopards and actual megafauna that can hurt you.
But those are cute. Those are cute animals.
Right.
They don't worry about having to go to the grocery store and have to get worried about getting attacked by a lion. Yeah.
So this is a true deal. 2 years ago, 2024, my wife and I went to Africa and we hunted. And she had bought a hunt at one of the Safari Club chapter banquets, and afterwards we went to we. She wanted to see Victoria Falls, and so we flew to Zimbabwe, and we took a few days, and we went to Zambia and Botswana, and we went to Chobe National Park in Botswana, and when we were on our way back into Livingstone, Zambia, uh, there were these guys riding their bikes, and they had these sticks. That's how they cooked. They went out and collected these sticks, and they burned these sticks. And he's riding his bike with this pile of sticks, and he waves us down, and he talks to the driver, and the driver says, "Is it okay if we go slow?" And I was like, "Sure, what's the problem?" "Well, there's an elephant up on the right, and it keeps charging across, and he's on a bicycle, and so he asked if we could shield him." That's the reality of living with these animals.
Yeah.
I saw it
Yeah.
firsthand.
Yeah. People don't think about that. And just to take a quick step back, you were speaking about gun bans, ammo bans. So you fight right alongside the NRA and gun rights for Americans, organizations like that, to preserve our right to bear arms as well.
That's true. Yes, we do a fair amount of legislation, lobbying, opposing gun bans that impact hunters. Now, as an example, I think, if it were a purely concealed carry issue, probably not going to get engaged on that. There are plenty of mainstream gun groups that would work that issue. Now, if it was like a ban on concealed carry while hunting, that's probably something that's a little nuanced that we would be more likely to engage in. But yes,
Like carrying a handgun during bow season if you're in
yes,
bear
that's a
country or something
prime
like that.
example. Carrying a handgun during bow season. And we had that issue in Kansas, and I worked on that as well back then and made sure that we clarified that you could still carry a handgun because concealed carry was new at that point. So there was a conflict between Kansas wildlife law and what the state law was with regard to concealed carry, and then we weighed the risk of whether or not we thought people would violate the law, and the reality was if they were going to violate the law, they'd probably do it anyway. So we went ahead and said, sure, let's allow concealed carry during bow season.
That's that's important, especially if you're in grizzly territory or brown bear territory. You're might be elk hunting with a bow, but there's predators out.
You're in close and you're calling and trying to attract an elk, and it also attracts predators.
Yeah, a bow isn't going to stop a bear in its tracks.
Right.
But
Not typically.
no, but all right, we're running out of time. I definitely appreciate you taking the time to discuss everything that, well, we touched on a lot, but I know there's a lot more that you guys are working on. Thank you again for taking the time, and we'll speak to you again real soon because I know there's a lot more on the docket to review.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
All right. Go to safariclub.org. Check out what they're working on. You could always stay up to date. If you're not a member of SCI, you should be. If you're not a member of the American Outdoor News, you should be as well. Thanks again, and we'll see you again next week.
All right. Thanks for having me.
We love our children. We protect them. We guide them. We prepare them for life in the world. With all that we do, from deep in our hearts, we cannot control all things. Life-threatening illnesses and disabilities affect far too many of our children each year. While we cannot change the circumstance, we can make dreams come true. Dreams to provide hope, to provide spiritual healing and strength, to provide moments of happiness and relief in the hardest of times. We can give a glimmer of light and hope in a time of darkness and despair. Join huntofolifetime.org to help make dreams come true, to provide hope for children with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Hunt of a Lifetime is a non-profit organization fulfilling dreams for hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Visit huntofalifetime.org to learn how you can make a difference.